Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and today I wanted to make a video about a topic that I've been thinking about quite a bit over the last couple months, which is a concept for Timewalking Mythic Plus in a way that I think would complement the current Mythic Plus system and would help shore up some of the weaknesses. So when we talk about weaknesses of Mythic Plus in Shadowlands, I think one of the biggest ones is just the number of dungeons that are available in Mythic Plus, right? In 9.0, 8 dungeons. In 9.1, 8 dungeons. Potentially 9.1.5 or 9.2, we will see that increase to 10 with Upper and Lower Tazavesh. But that's pretty far down the line, and then maybe we get another dungeon for 9.3. Like if it's released in 9.2, maybe we get it as M Plus in 9.3, maybe. Which eventually brings us up to that like 10 or 11 number. But I think one of the strengths of Mythic Plus back in, say, Legion was the number of dungeons that were available was just so high. So you couldn't do Violet Hold on M+, for good reason. But there were 2 Karazhan dungeons, so it actually evens out, and you got up to this 13 number by the end of the expansion. Although they only started with 10, and then added in Cathedral, Karazhan, Seat of the Triumvirate, as the expansion progressed. And similarly in BFA, there were more as well, including the addition of Mechagon midway through with Upper and Lower. But even before then, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so quite a bit more than we have in Shadowlands. But I think one thing that, people just say, oh, what if they just make more dungeons, right? But that's hard. Making dungeons is hard. Making good dungeons is especially hard. Why don't they use some of the great dungeons that have been designed now in the past 4 expansions? These have been dungeons designed around either challenge modes or Mythic Plus. And I think it wouldn't take too much work to port them forward, at least relative to the work of creating a whole new dungeon. It should take a lot less to port some of these forward into modern Mythic Plus. Now, I'm not proposing that just Mythic Plus for a certain expansion gets added to, say, to Timewalking weekends. Instead, what I think they should do is, for each season of Mythic Plus, pick 1 or maybe 2 dungeons from that previous pool of challenge mode era and onwards dungeons, and then bring them in to that season as a dungeon that can be in that season. And I think that there's actually a lot of good thematic choices based on what the season's about, right? Right now we're in Tormented season. Helia was a lore figure. You bring back Maw of Souls, right? Now Maw of Souls, again, there's some challenges there, right? Much shorter dungeon than a lot of the Shadowlands ones. Maybe a dungeon that some people don't like, although a lot of people have really fond memories of Maw of Souls. Others remember, grinding artifact power in there for months and don't really ever want to set foot in there again, so maybe you choose something else. But there's a lot of good options, right? Like, if you think about Beguiling season, which was Ajara themed, there's Court of Stars, would have been a great fit for that, as would, of course, Eye of Ajara. If you think about Prideful or Awakened, maybe there's some Mist of Pandaria dungeons. Prideful, the Shaw of Pride was actually in the raid, but Shaw in general, kind of works, kind of similar to Prideful. And similarly, there's old god themes in this expansion that you could go back to for Awakened, right? So I think that there's stuff that they could do to bring back even thematic dungeons, or just bring back dungeons even if they're not necessarily thematic to the current season, and just let us go and add them into the rotation again. Pick ones that were, popular, that were well-liked. Pick ones that don't require too much of a redesign to fit the modern idea of what dungeons are like, right? Because obviously, if you bring back some Legion dungeons, maybe there's parts of them that just don't work with the way that AoE cap is right now, or with the different theories of like, should mobs just be one-shotting people if they're in melee range? Should bosses be doing one-shotty levels of damage? Should mobs have this little health in some instances as well? And so maybe going through and doing a quick numbers pass on those sorts of things could be done. But honestly, even if it was a little bit out of place, I think it would be nice change of pace for the season to just be able to get, 1 or 2 old dungeons into your keystone rotation, right? Massively increases the amount of diversity of dungeons you would see. Because right now 8 does feel pretty limiting, I would say. Pretty claustrophobic, the number of dungeons you have there. Another thing that this would help with is another problem that I've felt in BFA and in Shadowlands has been this sort of way that every patch I'm just using the same trinkets from Mythic Plus, but 30 item levels higher or 26 item levels higher in Shadowlands. And so if you introduced old dungeons and you look through their rewards, maybe you buffed even some trinkets from the old dungeons if there weren't any exciting ones to make them more interesting, or redesign them a little bit to make them competitive again. Then instead, we could be playing Memento of Angerboda, right? That was a cool trinket from this place. Yeah, this thing. It was really good, and also I guess not that exciting or interesting, but I think it would beat using the same, the exact same. I remember in BFA using loaded dice and spyglass on a lot of specs, just all expansion, right? You would just upgrade them 30 item levels and then keep using them in the next patch. And so I think that this could be a cool way to address that problem as well. Another potential way of doing that would be to make seasonal trinkets, like they sort of do with PvP, right? Where the PvP trinkets come out, and there's this new chain trinket for the Tormented season. I think you could do something similar with Mythic Plus trinkets, but Timewalking Mythic Plus could potentially solve that as well. So yeah, not an idea without its challenges, but I think it would go a long way towards fixing some of the issues of not enough dungeons in the pool, and really making use of all this great dungeon design that really, it's really forgotten at this point from the past few expansions. Maybe you do the thing where, like, okay, you don't pick any from just last expansion, right? You give them a little bit of time to be out of the rotation, and then you just start cycling back in, right? We could bring back in Legion Wad and Mop dungeons for a little bit, and I think that one season long thing is good. I think the problem is, if you try and do it on a shorter time scale, we're just kind of like relearning the dungeons, and then by the time we've actually relearned them, they're gone again already, and we don't actually know them enough, and it's just the people who played them back originally that have a huge edge. But I think you don't want to do it for like a whole expansion necessarily either. There was some work done actually in MoP to do this, right? Scarlet Hall, Scarlet Monastery, Scholomance. These dungeons were from older, like from vanilla, right? And they were revamped into MoP. But I don't think that you need to do a full revamp of the dungeons from MoP onwards to make them work in Mythic Plus. I think that for the most part, they would work with a 10th, a 20th of the effort that it takes to make a new dungeon, maybe less. I'm not a dungeon scientist, to bring them into the modern era. Anyways, I'm repeating a lot of my stuff now, so figured I'd leave this video here. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think this would be a cool thing to do for Mythic Plus. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.